Right? As far as we're concerned now, we're in the middle of rehashing trials. They're doing trials with high-priced pharmaceutical cannabis on a very small number of kids, and the police are still very active against the compassionate growers in this country who are supplying cannabis with a proven track record of effectiveness. Well, I suppose I'd best describe as a medical practitioner. I've had sort of training in both naturopathic and allopathic medical systems, and spent 25 years working mostly in the public health system in pathology, in clinical medicine and in forensic pathology. My involvement with cannabis is a long one. It really grew out from 1988 of the need to find a solution to the logging crisis we're having in this country. The old growth eucalyptus forests, some magnificent forests in beautiful country, was being logged and sold as wood chip to Japan. In my research looking at what else we could do, the whole universe of industrial hemp opened up. The ability to make houses that are fireproof and termite proof, paper without chopping down trees, insulation material that doesn't give off poisonous gases. The list is endless. Hemp plastics. Basically, we can then conceive of a transition from a hydrocarbon nightmare of which we're now in to a carbohydrate future, where we can have high tech, we can have very, very safe cars that don't rust. Everyone's seen it on the internet. You can make hemp plastic cars with 10 times the impact resistance of steel. So that whole industrial thing inspired me. The medical grew after about 10 years of clinical practice. I realised that you don't make people well with endone or OxyContin. In fact, you usually make their problems worse. So I started supplying cannabis extracts and found I could reduce the need of narcotics in these patients dramatically, sometimes down to a quarter or even less of their previous dose with better pain control. So it seemed like a no-brainer. 4 years ago we got access to CBD cannabis in Australia, thank you CBD crew, and we've spread that around the country, and we're seeing the results in terms of childhood epilepsy, intractable childhood epilepsy. We're having some major successes across the board there, and we hope to build on that in the near future. Yeah, I suppose I should clarify what happened. I have been arrested recently. It was nowhere near as serious as people might think. It's part of a program that we feel essential. We have given up on the possibility that we can negotiate with any of the governments, state or federal, in this country, and to conduct those negotiations in good faith. I think that's no longer considered a possibility. They're unmoved by arguments of compassion, and we have to look to strategies to move things forward. So what we've done over the last 12 months, I've been extracting cannabis generally by sonication into oil for the provision of medical cannabis to sick children. But instead of throwing out the leftover leaf, we kept it. So there was 11 kilos of extracted cannabis leaf, which we left in a grow room, publicised its location on TV during a television report, and had the police arrive. So now we're hoping to, or expecting to have a trial by jury, where we expect to introduce the concept of jury nullification of statute law and a not guilty finding on the basis of medical necessity. So we're very comfortable with using the court as a showcase for the power of medical cannabis, and in doing so try and move this rather backward country forward in that regard. Concerning medical cannabis in Australia, unfortunately there's been more said than actually done. The main problem is our progress has been retarded by decisions made by the federal government, by Malcolm Turnbull. This is the way I interpret the situation. 2 years ago we were happy to support the Greens bill that there be an independent office of medical cannabis to oversee the cultivation, the production and the distribution of medical cannabis, independent of the rest of the pharmaceutical industry. But Malcolm Turnbull would not support that bill. Instead, the total control of the development of medical cannabis rollout has been placed under the control of the TGA, or the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Now, the only role that the TGA seems to fulfil in this country is to keep the prices of pharmaceuticals high for the enrichment of the pharmaceutical industry rather than the care of the population, and that's a really serious allegation that must be made against them. I consider a rapid rollout of medical cannabis to be essential for the population health that will bring. There is no doubt now, and anyone who says the jury's still out or there's no evidence as living in a bubble somewhere, but not in the real world. In the real world, the list of cannabis responsive conditions continues to grow, and the intermediate and longer term effects of benefit are now being seen, as several years of supervised administration has been achieved. Our view as to where the future will take it is that in Australia we need a 3-tier system of supply. The first tier, which is a basic human right, is home growing. And I don't mean a highly supervised restrictive regime, but 20 plants per person with no questions asked, as long as there's no financial transactions and sales of that material. The next tier of supply will be compassionate growers. People who are already involved in the provision of compassionate cannabis can take on a number of people, 5,000, 10,000 people with whatever condition they happen to be interested in, and take a close and therapeutic interaction at the proxy level. There, the herb will be subject to tests of purity and potency, but no other restrictions. At the third level of supply, if the allopathic doctors feel they can't prescribe anything other than pharmaceutical grade cannabis, which costs over 10 times the price of herbal cannabis, well then they can use that. But the patients can decide whether it's worth paying 10 times as much for the doctor's ineffective cannabis, their pharmaceutical cannabis, or go down to the hemp embassy or some other place and get your nice herbal cannabis. Cannabis has a safety profile unique in pharmacology. There is nothing that approaches the safety of cannabis across the board. So it can be safely treated as a self-initiated herbal medicine. It doesn't need to be pharmaceuticalised, and that benefits the companies but not the patients. And that's not what medicine is about. There is a problem at the moment. We have been advocates for several children which have been seized by Family and Community Services in New South Wales and Child Protection Services in Queensland on the most spurious of reasons. We have documented cases where the department has repeatedly lied, and chillingly they're lying knowing that we have the printed evidence to refute that lie. So they're so comfortable in their malfeasance and in their evil doing that they don't even bother to hide the fact that we're aware of their lies. Now these children have been seized and held basically incommunicado, and to compound the problem as far as I'm concerned, the department has taken a Supreme Court order out on me and a co-defendant, Paul, to prohibit us from even speaking the names of the children that they've illegally seized. At this stage, that's where it's up to. Well, we're disputing that in court, but it is a sad indictment of the way the legal system in this country is being used to actually suppress the voices of whistleblowers.